Every single day I passed for 3, 4, sometimes 6 blocks, city blocks lined with people holding signs saying "Burn the witch."
Yeah, and that's what's so frightening is, and hence the name The Shallows, is that because of global warming, sharks are pushed closer to shore. And, she's attacked, and you think of a shark attack being in the deep ocean.
What if everything you thought you knew about Celebrity X was a lie? The glamorous public persona, the awards, the fame, it all seemed perfect. But behind closed doors, a secret story was unfolding, one that would shock the world and change everything we thought we knew about them. Today we're diving into the untold truth, and trust me, this is one story you won't believe. Blake Lively's story seemed like the perfect Hollywood fairy tale. She was a young, talented actress with a smile that could light up any room. The early days of her career felt almost destined for greatness. It all started with Gossip Girl, the show that not only catapulted her into the spotlight, but also created an iconic character in Serena van der Woodsen, a role that seemed tailor-made for her. Overnight, Blake was everywhere: red carpets, magazine covers, and social media feeds. Fans couldn't get enough of her effortless beauty and relatable, down-to-earth vibe. It didn't hurt that her personal life, including her high-profile marriage to actor Ryan Reynolds, kept fans constantly speculating. Blake wasn't just an actress, she was the American sweetheart. But it wasn't just her looks or her relationships that kept her on top. Blake was carving out a space for herself in Hollywood, taking on a variety of roles that showcased her versatility. Whether it was in The Town, where she held her own against seasoned actors like Ben Affleck, or A Simple Favor, where she revealed a much darker side to her character, Blake was more than just a pretty face. She was proving she had the chops to be a serious contender in the industry. By the time she transitioned into a mogul in the making with her lifestyle brand Preserve, she was cementing herself as a powerhouse who could do it all. For years, it seemed like there was no stopping Blake. Her brand was impeccable, her career was soaring, and her personal life seemed like a picture-perfect reflection of the Hollywood dream. But as we all know, it's never quite that simple in the world of entertainment. Behind that flawless exterior, there were cracks starting to form, cracks that would soon turn into a full-on media storm. Blake Lively's rise to fame seemed flawless, but the truth is, even the brightest stars sometimes leave subtle clues that all is not as perfect as it seems. As her career took off, whispers began circulating, at first just rumors, but eventually undeniable signs that things weren't always as smooth behind the scenes. It all started with the mounting pressure of maintaining that picture-perfect image. As Blake became a household name, expectations skyrocketed. There was constant pressure to look perfect in every photo, to speak with just the right words in interviews, to always be poised, polished, and approachable. But the truth behind the glossy magazine covers was much more complex. Blake started to pull away from the public eye, spending more time with her family and less time with the paparazzi. Fans, accustomed to seeing her at every event, began noticing her absence, sparking theories about what could be going on behind closed doors. Then came the first hints of tension in her public relationships. While Blake and Ryan Reynolds had always been seen as the ultimate power couple, rumors began to surface about friction in their marriage. It wasn't anything concrete, just little signs, cryptic social media posts, strange interviews, and the occasional awkward public moment. While nothing major had been revealed, the cracks were becoming more noticeable. Was their seemingly perfect relationship starting to buckle under the weight of fame and family life? Meanwhile, Blake's career also started to show signs of wear. Her passion for acting seemed to wane, and her involvement in business ventures began to take center stage. Preserve, her lifestyle brand, seemed like the perfect next step for her, but behind the scenes, things were less than ideal. Critics claimed the brand didn't seem as authentic as Blake had hoped. The pressure to run a business, juggle her acting career, and keep up with family life was beginning to take its toll, and though she tried to keep up appearances, cracks in the facade were becoming harder to ignore. By the time the major scandal hit, many were starting to wonder if Blake was really in control of her own narrative. Were these just typical growing pains of someone trying to balance a successful career and family? Or was there something bigger going on beneath the surface?
We had such a responsibility to this audience to deliver something and to have the opportunity to deliver something for a passionate group of people.
Yes.
As someone who is so deeply passionate myself, I was so excited about that. I would so much rather have that than people who are indifferent.
Blasé.
Just when things seemed like they couldn't get more complicated, a shocking scandal exploded that would change everything for Blake Lively. It wasn't just any scandal, it was the kind that rocked her career, her marriage, and her carefully curated public image to the core. It all started with a private leak that no one could have predicted. A supposedly confidential video emerged online showing Blake in an incredibly candid, off-the-record moment. The video, captured by an anonymous source during a private gathering, caught Blake in an unflattering light. An offhand comment about her struggles with the pressures of fame quickly went viral. What was meant to be a vulnerable moment turned into a media frenzy. The internet exploded with debate about the video, with fans, tabloids, and even fellow celebrities offering their opinions. Was Blake simply having a bad day, or was this the beginning of a breakdown? While the video was shocking in itself, what came next was even more jarring. Insiders started leaking details of Blake's growing dissatisfaction with Hollywood and her own career. She reportedly expressed frustration about how her image was being manipulated by media outlets, how the perfect persona was suffocating her true self, and how the constant spotlight left her feeling isolated and disconnected from her own identity. She felt like a pawn in a game she never signed up for. And yet, she had no way out, but the scandal didn't stop there. The video, along with these insider leaks, triggered a chain reaction that pulled other parts of Blake's life into the chaos. The rumors surrounding her marriage to Ryan Reynolds went into overdrive. Speculation swirled that the couple was on the brink of a breakup, fueled by the strain of public scrutiny and the ongoing media storm. The press had a field day, circulating rumors that Ryan was frustrated with Blake's public outbursts, and some even suggested they were living separate lives despite the couple's best efforts to keep things under wraps. What had once been the golden couple was now the subject of constant gossip, their every move dissected in the tabloids. It wasn't just the media that was turning on her. Her loyal fans began questioning everything. How much of Blake's public persona had been a carefully constructed illusion? Were the moments she shared with the world truly real, or just part of a larger performance? The lines between her public and private lives were blurring, and Blake seemed powerless to stop the fallout. What happened next would shock everyone and leave many wondering whether Blake would ever recover from this public storm. The scandal that shook Blake Lively's world didn't just stop at rumors and tabloid fodder, it quickly turned into a full-blown public relations nightmare. What started as a leaked video and a few rumors soon spiraled into a media frenzy that seemed impossible to escape. The backlash was swift and unforgiving. Critics who had once praised Blake for her charm and relatability now turned on her. Social media erupted in waves of judgment, with hashtags like #BlakeLied and #NotSoPerfect trending worldwide. Fans who once adored her felt betrayed. For the first time, Blake found herself painted as a hypocrite, a woman who had deceived the public into thinking she was the epitome of grace and perfection, only to show a more flawed, vulnerable side in the worst possible way. But the real nightmare didn't come from the judgment of fans, it came from the legal consequences that followed. The leaked video, initially thought to be a harmless, candid moment, quickly became a source of immense legal pressure. Blake's team scrambled to figure out how to handle the situation, but it wasn't long before the threat of lawsuits became a reality. The source of the leak, which had come from a private event, was tracked down, and Blake found herself caught in a web of legal battles, facing accusations of breach of privacy and defamation from those involved in the video's circulation. What was supposed to be a simple leak quickly escalated into a legal storm, threatening to pull Blake deeper into the mud, but it didn't end with the leak. The ongoing speculation about her marriage to Ryan Reynolds also came under intense scrutiny, leading to more legal trouble. Tabloids that had once run glowing stories about their relationship now published articles with questionable sources and even unverified information about their personal lives. Blake's lawyers found themselves negotiating with media outlets, trying to keep the situation from spiraling even further out of control. What made matters worse was how Blake herself started responding to the pressure. No longer willing to stay silent in the face of constant scrutiny, she began to lash out publicly, responding to negative comments, calling out paparazzi, and even sharing her side of the story in explosive interviews. While it seemed like a courageous move to reclaim her narrative, these actions only added fuel to the fire, sparking even more controversy. The media was now divided. Some praised Blake for taking control of her image, while others criticized her for playing the victim. In the midst of all this, Blake faced one of her most difficult challenges yet, defending her reputation in a court of law. With her career hanging in the balance, she found herself engaged in a high-stakes battle, trying to salvage her name, her marriage, and her future in the industry. As the legal battles and public scrutiny escalated, Blake had to face a terrifying question. Could she ever return to the public eye the same way, or would this scandal define her career forever?
It's a bit of a tough adjustment in our house, but it's good. I mean, I have two other daughters, so my oldest is very into the baby, but my middle child, not so much. But we're thinking of keeping her.
Does she like play with her? What does she think?
Well, she sort of like pretends to play with her. So like in the beginning, our oldest is like loving on her, and she's like very maternal, and then our middle daughter is just keeps away from her.
One production assistant met.
While the public saw Blake Lively through the lens of scandal and legal battles, there was so much more happening behind the scenes. What many failed to realize was the immense emotional toll that the entire ordeal was taking on her. In the midst of constant media scrutiny, Blake began to retreat further and further from the spotlight. The woman who once dazzled on red carpets and embraced the chaos of fame was now grappling with a very private battle, one that she could never fully share with the world. Her marriage to Ryan Reynolds, once the symbol of Hollywood perfection, was now facing strain. Sources close to the couple revealed that, while Ryan stood by her side, the pressure was starting to take its toll. The constant rumors, the invasive paparazzi, and the never-ending cycle of legal battles left Blake emotionally drained. She tried to maintain her image of the happy, successful woman with a perfect life, but inside, it was a different story. The weight of expectations, both from her fans and herself, was suffocating. Her desire to be seen as perfect had become an impossible standard to meet, and every misstep seemed to bring more criticism. In interviews, she could no longer keep up the facade of the confident, charming celebrity. Instead, those who were close to her noticed a shift, a quiet, almost invisible sadness in her eyes. It wasn't just the media frenzy that was breaking her down. Blake struggled with an overwhelming sense of guilt. Guilt for her fans who felt betrayed. Guilt for the people who had supported her but now felt disappointed in her. And most hauntingly, guilt for her family. Blake's tight-knit family had always been a source of strength, but now they too were affected by the public's judgment. Her parents, her siblings, no one was immune from the onslaught of negative attention. Blake tried to protect them from the worst of it, but how could she shield the people she loved from an invisible enemy, the cruel power of public opinion? Behind closed doors, Blake was often in tears, struggling to navigate through a world where her every move was watched. Friends say she became reclusive, canceling social engagements and avoiding most interactions. Despite this, she continued to try and maintain some semblance of normalcy. When she did appear in public, her team made sure she was perfectly composed, but those who had known her for years could sense the cracks beneath her seemingly perfect exterior. For Blake, the idea of vulnerability, once seen as her strength, had now become her weakness. The pressure to be everything to everyone, to be both the perfect actress and the flawless woman in the public eye, was tearing her apart from the inside. And yet, despite the toll it was taking, Blake couldn't stop. She couldn't walk away. The industry, the fans, the contracts, they were all pulling her back in, demanding that she keep going. It was a vicious cycle. Every time she tried to step away from the limelight, the pressure to be seen and heard would pull her back in, dragging her deeper into the public eye. Even as she faced a personal crisis, Blake knew her career depended on public perception, and walking away wasn't an option. But as the scandal deepened and her personal struggles continued, it became clear she was paying a much higher price than anyone realized. Behind the scenes, Blake Lively was fighting a battle no one knew about, one that might have been even harder than the one the public was witnessing. As the cracks began to show, it was anyone's guess how long she could hold it all together before something or someone broke her down for good.
I think the idea that people think that they know you, I think because of how intrusive media is these days, there's people care so much more about your personal life than they do your work, and if you aren't open with your personal life, then they just make it up for you and share it for you.
Just when it seemed like Blake Lively couldn't take anymore, when the weight of her troubles threatened to completely crush her spirit, a shocking twist turned everything on its head. The media frenzy had reached its peak. The public backlash was relentless, and Blake appeared to be on the verge of a breakdown. But then, out of nowhere, the unexpected happened. It started with a cryptic Instagram post. In what felt like an abrupt departure from the chaos of her public life, Blake shared a simple yet profound message. Sometimes you have to lose yourself to find out who you really are. At first, it didn't make much sense. Fans were confused, speculating that it might be a quote from her personal life or an artistic statement, nothing too extraordinary, but still a little out of character. But the twist came soon after. Blake, who had been avoiding interviews and press events for months, suddenly appeared on a podcast. A podcast known for giving celebrities a platform to speak candidly about their lives without the filter of the paparazzi. And this time, Blake wasn't just talking. She was laying everything bare. For the first time in years, she stopped pretending. The polished public figure we all thought we knew was gone. She spoke candidly about the scandal that had nearly destroyed her, revealing details that no one could have ever anticipated. The allegations that had been thrown at her, the rumors, the legal battles, it was all part of a deeper and much darker truth. Blake admitted that much of the public drama had been fabricated by a handful of powerful individuals in the entertainment industry who were trying to manipulate the narrative to their benefit. She explained how, for years, she had been trapped in a world of lies where she had to play a role, live in a version of herself that wasn't real. The real story, the one no one knew, was that she had been fighting to reclaim her authenticity in a space that demanded she wear a mask. In an emotional revelation, Blake admitted that the scandal that broke in the media had been manipulated to cover up a larger industry conspiracy that involved the exploitation of young talent. Blake had been at the heart of it, but she hadn't realized how deep it went. When she began to question the way things worked behind closed doors, when she tried to stand up for herself and others, that's when everything started to fall apart. She spoke about the incredible fear she had felt, fear for her career, fear for her family, fear for her future. But despite the betrayals, the backstabbing, and the threats, Blake revealed that she had come out stronger on the other side. The podcast host and audience were stunned. What they had assumed to be another typical Hollywood scandal was actually the tip of the iceberg. Blake Lively had not only survived the storm, but she was now ready to expose the truth and rebuild her life on her own terms. The twist was as shocking as it was inspiring. The audience's perception of Blake had been completely turned upside down. No longer was she just a victim of scandal. She had emerged as a survivor, someone who had been fighting for far more than just her career. Blake had become a symbol of resilience in a world that had tried to crush her spirit. She wasn't just an actress caught up in controversy. She was a voice for the unheard, for those who had been manipulated and mistreated by the system. And perhaps the most shocking revelation of all? Blake's return to the limelight wasn't just about career recovery. She was now determined to take on the very system that had tried to destroy her. The industry's dark side was about to be exposed, and she was ready to lead the charge. In the months that followed, Blake's life took a dramatic turn. As she worked on new projects, she became more vocal about her experiences. She used her platform not just for her own career, but for the causes that mattered to her. She worked alongside advocates, supporting young actors and creatives who were facing the same battles she had once faced. Blake Lively's shocking twist wasn't just about one woman rising above scandal, it was about one person's journey to dismantle the very structures that had been controlling her and countless others for years.
It's believing that people and humanity are inherently good. And they crave nutritious food in their soul, just as they do in their bodies.
The world was watching. With the explosive revelations about the dark side of Hollywood and Blake Lively's shocking return to the spotlight, the question on everyone's lips was clear. Was this truly a new beginning for Blake, or was it just the final fall of a star who had already been torn apart? Despite all the public support, not everyone was ready to let Blake off the hook. The industry that once adored her wasn't so willing to forgive. Critics, executives, and even some of her former colleagues whispered that she'd gone too far, that exposing the industry's secrets had threatened too much of the status quo. The backlash was swift and unforgiving. Blake's social media was bombarded with hate, her mentions filled with accusations of betrayal. She had become a symbol of defiance, but she had also become a target. Some of the very people she had once trusted turned their backs on her, and public opinion once again began to shift. The same audience who had once embraced her now questioned if they were ready to accept the new, unfiltered version of Blake Lively. Her career, already on shaky ground, faced even more hurdles. Big studios, once eager to cast her in major roles, now hesitated. Deals that had seemed promising months before evaporated. There were whispers that Blake's name had become toxic to producers, that her exposé had rattled too many cages. It felt as though the career she had worked so hard to build was slipping away faster than ever, but through the storm, Blake remained resolute. She took a step back from the red carpets, distancing herself from the spotlight in order to focus on something much more important. She wasn't interested in regaining her old image or chasing after the roles that had once defined her. Instead, she began collaborating with independent filmmakers, supporting grassroots projects, and using her platform to help emerging artists who had been crushed by the same system that almost destroyed her. The public couldn't ignore her resilience. Despite the chaos, Blake became a symbol of the fight for authenticity in a world that thrived on image and illusion. Slowly but surely, a new narrative about her began to take hold. No longer was she seen as just another celebrity scandal, but as a pioneer for change. Someone who had gone through hell and came out the other side stronger and with a greater purpose. But the journey wasn't easy. Behind the scenes, Blake faced even more personal struggles. The stress and pressure from her battles in the public eye took a toll on her relationships and mental health. She often spoke about the loneliness that came with standing up for the truth in an industry that thrived on lies. But through all of this, Blake found peace in a surprising place, herself. The constant noise of the entertainment world faded away as she focused on her family, her passions, and her new mission of supporting others who had been cast aside. And then, in an unexpected turn, Blake made an announcement that took the world by surprise. She was launching her own production company, a company built on the values she had fought for. It wasn't about making movies that would appeal to the masses or follow the typical Hollywood formula. No, Blake's new venture would focus on stories that mattered. Stories about real people, stories that weren't afraid to expose the truth, stories that empowered those who had been silenced for far too long. The announcement was met with mixed reactions. Some applauded her bravery, others questioned whether this was just another desperate attempt to remain relevant. But one thing was clear, Blake Lively was no longer playing by anyone's rules but her own. As she stepped into her new role behind the camera, many wondered if this was the final chapter in Blake Lively's story, or if it was only the beginning of something even bigger. Would she remain the Hollywood darling she once was, or had she truly reinvented herself as something far more important? An advocate, a mentor, a leader in a world that often crushed those who tried to speak out. As the dust began to settle, one thing was certain. Blake Lively had defied the odds. She had survived the scandals, the betrayals, the industry's manipulations, and had emerged on the other side more authentic and powerful than ever. Whether this was her final fall or the beginning of a new chapter, only time would tell. But for now, Blake Lively had created a legacy that would live on long after the headlines had faded. So, what's the final word on Blake Lively's rise, fall, and unexpected rise again? Is she truly reinventing herself, or is this just another chapter in a never-ending cycle of fame and scandal? After everything she's been through, the betrayals, the scandals, the public and personal battles, one thing is for sure, Blake's story is far from over. But will her new path lead to redemption, or has she already sacrificed too much for a second chance? Only time will tell. But one thing's certain, when it comes to Blake Lively, nothing is ever as it seems.